Welcome to It's About Data, episode 65. This is an interview with Angie Jones of the Agentic AI Foundation and Jim Zemlin of the Linux Foundation at MCP Dev Summit.
So we're live here at, I guess, is this the first MCP Summit that's being held by the Linux Foundation?
That's right.
And it's here at the, where else to start? At the crossroads of the world, which is Times Square. Where I'm a New Yorker. It's like you really, you're kind of, hitting me literally where I live. But we're at Marriott Marquis. And from what I've heard, unfortunately, I had to parachute in late. But I've heard you've had an amazing turnout this week. Let me introduce our guests, today. We start with Jim Zemlin. You're the CEO of the Linux Foundation. And Angie Jones, you're Vice President of the Developer Experience at the Agentic AI Foundation. Jim, can you give us a little background on where you're coming from? And then Angie, I'll ask the same for you, and also how the Agentic AI Foundation basically fits with the mission of the Linux Foundation.
Sure.
So Jim, can you kick it off?
So I've been at the Linux Foundation about 22 years. The Linux Foundation is home to some of the most consequential open source software in the world, Linux being the most obvious backbone of almost all computing systems in the world. But we're also home to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which is where Kubernetes was born, which is modernized the way cloud applications are built, deployed, and managed. So all cloud computing systems now essentially run on Kubernetes. And so having seen the transition from, sort of closed source operating systems to Linux, from, sort of client server to cloud, we're now in one of the biggest technology transitions in any of our lifetimes, no matter how old you might be or young. The advent of AI, particularly agents, is going to impact everyone. And we're really proud to be sort of the parent company to the fastest growing open source effort I've ever been a part of, which is the Agentic AI Foundation. Obviously, the most important project in the Agentic AI Foundation is MCP. This is the HTTP of agents that allows these intelligent agents to connect to servers and data and even do things on behalf of their users and all of us. I think it's going to have a big impact on the world.
It's really amazing. And actually, as I recall, MCP was donated by Amtrak to the Linux Foundation.
That's right.
I remember it was, I guess now about a year and a half ago, but it's right before AWS reInvent 2024, I guess it was. And I saw, a blog post from Anthropic, and I saw wait a second, models connecting to data. But what's really amazing about MCP is just how it really seems to have taken off almost literally overnight. Angie, tell us basically, where now you're VP of Developer Experience with the Agentic AI Foundation.
Right.
So, tell us about what you're involved with and what your group is involved with, how it relates to Linux Foundation.
Yeah. So we formed the Agentic AI Foundation in December of 2025. And there are lots of companies that are looking at this like, hey, does seem like the de facto standard, but it's also kind of locked into a vendor right now, right? And so Anthropic agreed with that as well. If you're going to bet your enterprise solutions on this, and this is how you're going to connect the data, this is what you're going to use internally, this is where you're going to build your products on, then you want that to be a part of a neutral body, right? And that's what Linux Foundation is famous for, providing that governance. And so this was a perfect place to donate MCP to and to form the Agentic AI Foundation.
Tell me about the evolution of MCP. So what's the vision right now from the foundation for where MCP is going? I think one of the conversations we've had a lot with enterprises that are adopting this technology is about access control, controls around data, about what agents can access. And I know some MCP server providers have kind of come up with their own solutions. I assume that the Agentic AI Foundation is very interested in this conversation. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of start and then pass
Yeah.
to Angie, which is, this week at the MCP Dev Summit, of which we're going to do, 7 more throughout the year all over the
Yeah.
world. There's 1,200 people out here, and all of them are huge MCP fans. And the big question they have is the one that you articulated, which is, this is incredible. For the first time, I've got technology that uses other technology as opposed to technology that people use to get stuff done. And in order to use that effectively, I need to be able to make sure that it's secure. I need to make sure that identity and access controls and that security perimeters are created around this. I need an orchestration system, a sort of control plane for these agents to make sure that I can control my token utilization, or that I can correct bad behavior that the agents may have when we're in process. So the Agentic AI Foundation is not only about MCP, which is maturing in terms of the way that the primitives in the specification can help solve those problems, but there's a whole bunch of scaffolding that you have to put around an agent infrastructure that's enabled by the MCP protocol, but has all kinds of other things that are needed, gateway technology, permissioning, identity, all the things you mentioned. And that is really the bigger vision of the Agentic AI Foundation. It's not just about MCP, which is this enabling technology. I'll even predict in 2 years, we're not even going to be talking about MCP because it'll be just be HTTP of agent, right? But we'll have a whole suite and family of different components that are needed to handle all these issues. And like that's what 1,200 people here are excited to talk about. And it's a pretty cool conversation.
Mm-hmm. The members are very involved. We have several working groups for each of these aspects where community members can contribute. Companies can, dedicate talent to solving some of these problems and contribute back to the protocol for their specific needs.
Right. I'm David Guy.
Okay.
I remember, Milton Source with the history of Round and Duke, where it had the zoo animals. And so what I'm wondering this time is like, what lessons have you folks learned so this does not become a new collection of agentic zoo animals?
That's a great question. I think we've learned a ton over the years. The Cloud Native Computing Foundation in particular, I think has done a good job.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing you have to remember as a user of this kind of technology or any technology is that tech is an implicit futures contract. Right. You know this as a data guy, you're like, hey, if I bet on this particular database technology versus that, and everybody goes this way and I went that way, that's not good for me because I'm eventually going to have to change everything. And so what people want to hear is, what is the agentic stack? Just like they want to hear, what is the big data stack? What is the cloud native stack? That stack, that agentic AI stack, is being built like the Agentic AI Foundation. What we've learned over the years is that by having an incubation process for technology that's curated under an entity like Agentic AI Foundation, we're able to get to the final answer of what does the stack look like without trying to determine that stack too early. Picking tech is super hard. How do I know this? Because there's an entire venture capital industry that tries to do this all the time. They're worth billions and trillions and they get it wrong all the time, but every once in a while they're right, and that's where they make all their money. And so we need to make sure that we allow innovation to happen organically. So we have kind of an early incubation stage in projects that come into the organization. And then over time, this will eventually graduate. So in the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, there's a bunch of projects in a sandbox phase, then a bunch more who are a little bit more mature in this incubation phase, and eventually they graduate. Kubernetes, it's graduated. Istio graduated. These projects that are like, hey, these are rock solid, huge user base, robust support community, excellent technology. You can count on this. And by having that phased approach, letting stuff sort of, organically maybe compete a little, sort of grow their way into that graduation stage, get to that stack quicker. Right. And that's what everybody wants, right? It's like, hey,
we would like the answer yesterday.
You don't want an answer when the technology is terrible.
Everyone is innovating right now. And so we're kind of watching to see like what the community is rallying behind. And we really saw that with MCP. The community voted with that. You know what I mean? And they decided that this is the default protocol. There were other protocols that were competing against MCP. And it came to the point where all of the competing innovators had to say, all right, that's the clear winner. Let us help you.
Yes.
You see? Versus continue to try to compete because, hey, look, we need to move on from this and get to the next layer in the stack. And so that's what we saw. The AAIF was founded with Anthropic and OpenAI. OpenAI had a competing protocol early on, right? And so they realized, okay, this is where we're headed. Great. Let's sit down at a table. Let's talk about it. Let's kind of get on the same page here. And we're going to see that with multiple other protocols where there may be 3, 4, or 5 different versions of them. That's where we come in, where we, these folks are members of the foundation. We say, hey, let's get together. Let's talk about this. What does your protocol offer that yours doesn't? Is there like some common ground here?
Matt, you want to jump in here?
Yeah. So I think, Jim, you already alluded to this, but Angie, I'll ask you now, which is MCP, we've envisioned it as kind of being the HTTP as being a base layer protocol. So what are the other big problems that the Agentic AI Foundation is focused on right now in the higher levels of the stack? As you said, Angie, you're not in the business of picking winners necessarily. You kind of see where the industry goes and you adopt. But at the same time, you have this huge leadership role in saying, okay, this is where we think we need to go. Let's get together and figure this out. So what's going on in those higher levels of the stack right now?
Yeah. So there's agents are everywhere, right? And they're being integrated in pretty much everything that we do. So there's a lot of activity around things like payments, all sorts of things. So there's movement everywhere, and we're paying attention to all of this. We regularly look at what's out there, what open source projects are gaining adoption, what protocols seem mature, right? And we're meeting regularly with, we have a technical committee, we have a governing board, we're meeting regularly to look at the ecosystem and see what other projects would be a good fit for the foundation.
Sounds to me like we're at the beginning of a very interesting trajectory here, a real interesting journey. And we're looking forward to having some further conversations with you a few months down the line, maybe down in San Jose.
All right, sounds good.
Jim and Angie, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.